And please remember to like, subscribe, and GFY.
What's up, guys? Welcome to Have Fun Stacking Sats. This is going to be the third or fourth episode of our Adopting Bitcoin series. And today I have the privilege of having Patrick from Bitcoin Lake. What's going on, Patrick? How you doing, man?
Hey man. Thanks, Anthony. Thanks for having me. Well, and by the way, it's my privilege to be here and talk with you. Anytime I get a chance to talk about what we're doing down at Bitcoin Lake, I always enjoy the opportunity. So thanks for the platform. So I mean, if your audience is not familiar with what we're doing down in Guatemala, the name of our project is Bitcoin Lake, and it's in a little town called Panajachel, Guatemala, or Pana for short. And we started a little less than a year ago, January of this year, and the project has just exceeded my expectations. There are some areas that I wish would move along a little bit better, but as far as the notoriety or the interest that people have shown has just exceeded my expectations. So I'm super excited to talk to you about what we're doing.
Awesome, yeah.
And just for the audience sake, just my background, I'm a little older, I've got some gray hair, but I'm a surgeon by training and got out of medicine, retired from medicine about 2 years ago, and kind of started working full time on this project. And at that time, and started in Bitcoin, first purchased my Bitcoin and my first Bitcoin, not the whole Bitcoin, but Bitcoin in 2018, but didn't really understand the fundamentals. And I think, like a lot of people during the COVID shutdowns, had a lot of extra time on my hands, and that's kind of when I went down the rabbit hole and started developing the thesis that became Bitcoin Lake. And so that's my background. Happy to talk as much as you want.
Wonderful. So one of the things that I learned throughout the process of reading about you guys is there's actually 2 Bitcoin lakes. Is that wrong? So
no, that's right. That's right. There are 2 Bitcoin lakes. The way I like to kind of parse that is, as Bitcoiners, we're all about proof of work. And so I think if you want to learn about what we're doing or the other project, just look at our proof of work, and that's kind of all I want to say about that.
Fair enough. Okay. So I wasn't sure, because it's Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin is decentralized, so Bitcoin communities are decentralized, and how many Bitcoin beaches are there going to be? Every beach is Bitcoin beach if you think about it, right? So you're going to run into these sort of things. So looking at our experience with Bitcoin Lake is from StackChain, right? So we came across you guys, and at that time, you were working with the school and trying to get some 3D printers. Why don't you tell us about your StackChain experience, and then we can talk about the school and kind of go from there.
Yeah, I mean, I want to thank Derek Ross for kind of introducing me to StackChain, and he's been a big fan and follower of our project for quite some time. And I reached out to him to see if StackChainers would be interested in helping us acquire some 3D printers. And he said, yeah. And so my experience with StackChainers has been phenomenal. And within, it wasn't even a full day. We had all the funds that we needed to acquire the 3D printers. The funds to acquire the 3D printers. Unfortunately, at the time, I was planning a return trip down in Guatemala. I don't live there. I can explain all that. I was planning a return trip down to Guatemala, and so when we received the funds, the price of Bitcoin was not where it is now.
But
we were able to. When I went down to El Salvador and then took a group from Adopting Bitcoin to Guatemala, I acquired a 3D printer, took it to the school, and we actually did the inaugural, unveiling of it at the school. Even though they were out of session, we had an open house and demonstrated the 3D print and 3D printer and some initial 3D print. So it was a phenomenal experience. And the reason I wanted to do that, first of all, I'm into 3D printing and really kind of got into 3D printing from my Bitcoin experience. It's just another decentralized technology that even before Bitcoin, I knew 3D printing was going to change, how we do things. And so as I thought about, okay, we're bringing a decentralized technology with Bitcoin to Panajachel, to these children that just don't have access to anything like this. And I thought, 3D printer would be yet another cool example of this decentralized technology that could transform their lives in a small community that's 3 hours outside the Guatemala City. So that's kind of the history and the experience, and I'm truly thankful for Stack Chainers. And hopefully the new school year, when it begins here in January, February, I'll be showing off some cool 3D prints that the kids have done.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for giving us that opportunity, because Stack, for the most part, Stack Chainers are just working class people stacking sats, right? So we don't have the opportunity to necessarily go to these communities and participate. So when we understand how important this is. Bitcoin adoption around the world is really, really important. It's not just about, fiat value go up. It's about decentralization and censorship. And we all really, really believe in that. So when communities like Bitcoin Lake or, Bitcoin Akazi, Bitcoin Beach or whatever, when we have an opportunity to help these communities, it's honestly like the best part of Stack Chain, where we can reach out and make a positive impact in the world. And that doesn't happen without people like you, Patrick. So,
well, thanks so much. I mean, I'm honored, because I think that what the 3D printer does is, I've been in school I went through school for many, many years. And I think the promise of decentralized technology, 3D printers, Bitcoin, the educational system that Mike Saylor's got going, it's allowing children who normally wouldn't have access to something like that to be able to participate. And not everyone needs to go and get, a 4-year degree or a master's or a graduate degree. And if they could just learn and apply themselves. And I think that's one of the things that's kind of broken or wrong with our American educational system is, you get into public school setting and they kind of channel you. First of all, they channel you into the single path that everybody should get into. And we all know that we shouldn't all be on the same path. And they channel us towards mediocrity. And because, you can't have a curriculum that's for everybody if you've got exceptional students and middle students and low students. And so they just kind of funnel us into mediocrity. And I think decentralization is going to kind of allow us to individually flourish. I wholeheartedly believe that. So it's kind of cool to be on that end of it.
I completely agree. So tell us about the school. What is the school, and what are you guys doing there?
Yeah, so the school is Centro Educativo Josue. It's a small Christian school, although it's run by a Christian family, but they don't really push a Christian curriculum. But that's the background. And we first became aware of CEJ, or Centro Educativo Josue, when I took my family down to Guatemala in 2012. And I would take my family down, and we would do summer art camps, and we'd go every year. We went every year from 2012 to 2018, and we developed a relationship with Nancy, who owns the school, and her children. And because of that association, when I started learning about Bitcoin and where I wanted to apply it, I immediately thought of Panajachel and the school. And so that's kind of what the school is about. But it's really kind of a small Christian school. It's kind of a step between the poor educational environment that is kind of common within the public Guatemalan school system, but it really prepares students for that next step to kind of get I guess what in the U.S. would be probably, junior, senior high school education and or vocational training, but it kind of preps them for that next step. So.
Awesome. So Bitcoin Lake is a larger project. It doesn't just involve the school, but you guys are doing other things there as well. So what are some of the other things you guys are doing?
Yeah, so let me just kind of explain my philosophy of how I started the project, or how I conceived of it, and then I'll kind of explain what we're doing, and then kind of what's going on right now. So when I was going down the proverbial rabbit hole, I was starting to develop kind of I think like most Bitcoiners who go down that rabbit hole, just kind of blown away with just every Bitcoin, and forget the monetary aspects, just everything that Bitcoin could fix. And because of my Christian faith, my Christian background, I really wanted to have a project that demonstrated what Bitcoin could do in certain disadvantaged economies. And because one of the problems, when we go on our trips, I had been on previous trips with churches, years before. But one of the problems when you go on a Christian mission or a humanitarian mission, like with the Peace Corps or something like that, you can go build a church, you can go build a school, you can dig a water well, but a lot of times what's lacking is economic opportunity. And the reason for that is it's really difficult to create economic opportunity without creating dependence. You come as the privileged white guy or the privileged person from the West, and if you start giving people money, then it just completely clouds and muddies that relationship, and it can make your work worse than what you wanted it to be at the beginning. So that whole piece of trying to bring economic opportunity without dependence was kind of rattling around in my brain, and because of the vast natural resources in the lake region, which we could talk about, and because of the promise of Bitcoin mining, I thought, wow, this would be a great opportunity to use the wind, the solar, the hydro, the geothermal, basically every possible renewable energy source known to man is available in Panajachel. But because it's not in a geographic, high population center, all of that energy is stranded and or wasted, which we'll talk about. So the plan was to create a mining facility or a mining concept where the energy that was being used, the sats that were created from that, a portion of that would go back into the economy. And I always like to say this, and we haven't really figured out what this is going to look like yet, but rather than UBI, which is universal basic income, that comes from a centralized source and it's distributed, we like to call this DBI, decentralized basic income, where you're taking basically decentralized energy sources and distributing it back into the community because it's their energy. And the other thing that I always like to mention on podcasts like this, or when I'm talking about what we're doing down there, is my wife is Mexican American, association with the Hispanic culture, and it's not lost on me that what the Europeans and Spaniards have done, 400 or 500 years ago, has a lasting legacy. They came in and they basically just took advantage of the indigenous community, took all the gold from the land and took it back to Europe. Very large transfer of wealth. And so I look at Bitcoin as digital gold, and I feel strongly that I want the digital gold of that region to stay there, and that's a real important thing for me. So I wanted Bitcoin Lake to demonstrate what Bitcoin could do. So we were focusing on Bitcoin mining, focusing on education, and then obviously, like all of the Bitcoin economies or circular economies that are out there, projects that are out there, we wanted to create a circular economy so that businesses could accept Bitcoin, and the citizens could, if they receive Bitcoin, then they could start spending it, obviously. And the main, really, there's really nothing nuanced or complicated about that proposition for the people there in Panajachel. The easy sell for us when we started talking about Bitcoin was the fact that we're giving you access to a generational savings technology and access to an asset that you never have access to before. So from that perspective, it was kind of easy to talk to the Guatemala. I don't want to make it sound like it was like happy-go-lucky and everything. The dominoes fell. It's a freaking lot of hard work, but you don't have to get real complicated about monetary policy and all that, because they live in inflation. They understand all that just intuitively. So when you're giving them access to something like Bitcoin, they get it. Okay. That doesn't mean they're going to accept it, but they understand what you're saying, and they understand the promise that Bitcoin holds. But yeah.
What is the inflation like in Guatemala?
It's I really don't know I've never really calculated the inflation. I know it's beyond what it's here in the States. Just that's intuitive based on the Cantillon effect, and then the fact that basically our monetary policy dictates all monetary policy in
Right.
Central America. And the very interesting thing about Guatemala is, even though the local currency, the quetzal, is a pretty stable currency, they're just totally dependent upon the U.S. economy. Or U.S. monetary policy. I will say that on one of my trips, I think it was in March, we were sitting down at a restaurant and we saw inflation, taking hold, because I'd been to this certain restaurant several weeks before. We get there and I'm looking at the menu, and they had taken little strips of tape or paper and putting on new prices. So we were living the same inflation that the U.S. was, but I can't give you a specific number, but it's intuitive that it's higher than what's going on.
I mean, I wasn't so much interested in the number, but more like the impact of the people, because like inflation has a like an imbalanced, effect on people who are disadvantaged. Like the wealthy, they feel inflation, but they have assets, so the assets keep pace with inflation. But those people who don't have assets, they get harmed. And I don't really know Guatemala's economic story. I know I know a little bit of the history with like the what's it called, the fruit company and all these things. And I know that it's like a buffer zone where there's a lot of not legal traffic that flows through the country. It's not happening from the people of Guatemala. It's poorly located in that illegal things have to travel back and forth, and Guatemala's in the way. So
that's right.
That causes a lot of suffering there. The people.
Anthony, I will say, there are a lot of immigrants or immigrants from Guatemala that come to the U.S., but you're right. A lot of the negative press that we hear is coming from further south, and obviously the drugs have to make their way from Colombia all the way up through Central America. So there are drug routes and things like that. But by and large, the economic situation in Guatemala is such that, like any developing country, you've got the very rich and you've got the very poor. It's not a middle class that we would think of, but there are some that are, not poor. But Guatemala is kind of interesting because after they had a very long civil war, 40-year civil war, similar story to El Salvador. A lot of it was instigated by the American government, CIA. But at the conclusion of the Civil War, the military junta or the dictatorship that was in place was obviously very corrupt. But they persisted in the current government structure. So corruption is so endemic within the government of Guatemala, and it's not something you could point at something and say, "Hey, I see corruption there." It's it's a bribe here, it's a bribe there, or things cost more than they should because someone's taken a cut off of it, or and I'm going to tell a story when we get going a little bit about what I saw in corruption. But and the really neat thing about where we are in Guatemala is what was raging. It was really the government forces against the indigenous people, and we're 3 hours outside of Guatemala City in the west of Guatemala, heavily indigenous Mayan population, and they suffered tremendously at the hands of the government. And there's a significant distrust of any central authority in this part of Guatemala. So it's very safe there because they're very close knit. and they don't trust outsiders. Government gringos are fine. When we come in, it's fine, obviously, but it's kind of a dichotomy in Guatemala. That's kind of what I'm trying to paint, but yeah, we're trying to bring hope to that situation, obviously.
Well, I mean, it sounds like a community that's ripe for Bitcoin. Like, the distrust of government, this enormous like fiat suffering, like, fiat is powered by war, right? And these are the kind of places that suffer as a result of that. The people that live in these areas are going to understand this much better than we ever could. So it's amazing that so you said that that explaining Bitcoin and getting the people there to understand Bitcoin is fairly simple. How have they embraced it?
Let me qualify that. It's not. I don't think explaining Bitcoin's simple. That the concepts that we're trying to educate them on are simple enough for them of what they've lived in. And as far as how's it going, I will say that first of all, I want to acknowledge my team that helps me do this.
Please,
remarkably, I don't live in Guatemala. I don't even speak Spanish. I mean, I know enough to get by, but we have a group. Eric Gonzalez up in Canada, Bill Whitaker here in the U.S., Hurston Martinez, and Ricardo Comeron are kind of part of the founding team as well as Nancy. So it's really I'm the spokesperson, I'm the face, but I couldn't be doing this without them. There's just no way I could be doing that. And then what made it really kind of an easy task, so to speak, for me is I met a Guatemalan down there last year, actually about this time before we started the project. Eleazar is his name, and Eleazar has basically become our Chimbeta at Bitcoin Beach. He's like the key person. He's an extrovert. He's gregarious, and he's just a lovable guy. And he's motivated and smart, but he didn't know anything about Bitcoin. So I'm sitting in a hotel having breakfast. He's my server. And I think I was wearing either a Bitcoin Beach shirt or a Bitcoin Magazine shirt, but it said Bitcoin on it. And he walked in his broken English, what is Bitcoin? I want to know more about it. And from there, I invited him to an orange pill session that I was giving. He came, and little by little, he started learning about Bitcoin. And one of my founders and I sent him to Bitcoin Beach for a week. We paid for him to go there and kind of learn about it. So, and he'll tell you the story. I mean, he was going to Bitcoin Beach. He didn't know anything. He didn't know what to expect. He just knew that he was going to have this trip to Bitcoin Beach, and he went there and learned about it and was just blown away by what he saw. And he came back and was motivated and excited to help us with this project. And, he's the reason that we're a success. No question about it.
Awesome. Shout out. The people there, how are the people at Bitcoin Lake using Bitcoin for the people that are using it?
Well, right now, great question. What our goal was to basically recreate a Bitcoin Beach environment in the sense that I wanted to attract Bitcoiners to come there and vacation. So they're kind of, if you look at kind of the different models that are being used right now, you've got Bitcoin Acasi or Bitcoin Beach Brazil, where they're focusing on almost exclusively, and they're creating a kind of a mini circular economy with the children when they go to the tiendas or their shops to buy whatever they want to. And then you've got the Bitcoin Jungle experience, where it's really targeted towards expats and pretty sophisticated users, and they're just looking for an easy payment system. And then you've got the experiences like what's going on in Bitcoin Beach, and what we're doing is where we're trying to introduce Bitcoin because of all its promise, but we're really trying to bring in a tourism aspect to it, because the communities that we're working in are really prone to significant tourism. And So at Bitcoin Beach, so to kind of give you a picture of the demographics, at Bitcoin Beach in El Salvador, it's a town of about 3,000 people. If you go there, whatever you think about a surf town, that's Bitcoin Beach, right?
Nice.
So lazy, got a nice vibe to it. Panajachel is a town of about 18,000 people, so it's 5 times the size. There, people from all over the world come. You can walk down one of the main tourist streets in Panajachel, and if you listen carefully enough, you can probably hear 4 or 5 different languages. And the Lake Atitlan, is one of the most beautiful lakes in the world. It tops one of the top 10 most beautiful lakes in the world. And so people come to Panajachel as kind of a launch point, and there are about 16 or 17 other communities around the lake, and they come to Pana as a launch point, and then they go to these other communities to do whatever they want to, because every community has its own vibe, and some of these communities you can't reach but by boat. So we really wanted to target businesses that would cater to tourists, and so that's kind of what we did. And we are just now getting into the phase of trying to target actual groups of locals to get them to adopt Bitcoin and start using it, because we really wanted people to come. It's a chicken egg thing. You can onboard as many businesses as you want, but if people aren't coming to spend Bitcoin, then the business owner raises their eyebrow and says, well, why do I want to accept Bitcoin? People aren't spending Bitcoin. So we've gotten past that hurdle. And here in this next year, we're going to be phasing in some really cool things, but we're going to be reaching out to one of the barrios in Panajachel. There are 8 or 9 different barrios or small communities in Panajachel. This one has about 9,000 people in it. And then there's another smaller community up the mountain that we're going to be targeting specifically with some different Bitcoin education. So that's kind of the lay of the land of what we're doing. Yeah.
So you are the third person I've talked to that representing the third community in this Adopting Bitcoin series, and the Bitcoin Island, they had a developer that created the Pouch PA wallet, and so the ability to seamlessly go back and forth between sats and the local currency was huge for them. And then in that app, they also included things that the local people needed. Like the local people, they the way that they pay for their services is through their phone. So they incorporated an easy way to do it through Pouch, things like that. Do you guys have something? And the reason I'm bringing this up is because that was amazing. Those guys in 7 months, they went from 0 to hundreds of merchants onboarded, and I could go there today and spend Bitcoin. They did that in 7 months. So I feel like that's a very powerful thing. Do you guys have anything like that, or no?
No, but we have a similar Bitcoin experience. So I'll back into that question, but it was really critical for us that I wanted to make sure that if a Bitcoiner came to Panajachel, even if they flew into Guatemala City, that they could get to Panajachel, live in Panajachel, sleep in Panajachel, go to a bar, go to a restaurant, go to a grocery store, get your hair cut, get stuff printed on paper, get stickers made, all paying in Bitcoin. So you can effectively come to Panajachel, and if you want to live completely on Bitcoin, you can live completely on Bitcoin. That was critical for us. Now, in the short amount of time that we've been doing what we're doing throughout Guatemala, we have nearly 200 businesses that are accepting Bitcoin.
Oh, that's great. So that's amazing.
Yeah. So suffice it to say, that was really critical for us. But one of the, I guess, disadvantages of our team is we really don't have any coding experience. And so when I first started the project, I was kind of weighing different wallet options. And I remember in November or December of last year, when I was kind of introducing the project to the community before launching, I think we were using just Wallet of Satoshi because it's just so easy to use. But then as I started researching different wallets and trying to understand what I wanted to accomplish with the community, we really favored and landed on the Bitcoin Beach wallet. And I can say this with all transparency, and Bitcoin Beach won't mind. It wasn't perfect. I don't even think right now there's a perfect solution out there because everyone's got such unique needs. But it was a starting point for us. And what was so important for us is number one, within the Bitcoin Beach wallet. By the way, if your listeners are here in the U.S., you can't download the Bitcoin Beach wallet. It's not available in the U.S. But if you're outside the U.S., you could download it. But within the Bitcoin Beach wallet, there's a map. So having started, I'm an entrepreneur in addition to being a doctor. So I know kind of the sales process. And so, if you go up to a vendor and you say, hey, Jose down the street's accepting Bitcoin, he might believe you. But if you go to the next vendor, you say, Jose and Mario and, Enrique are accepting Bitcoin, you might get some raised eyebrows. But if you can show them on a map that, their peers are accepting Bitcoin, that became a huge thing for us. And even at the beginning, when there weren't any vendors in Panajachel that were accepting Bitcoin, we could scroll over to El Salvador and show them, look, this is what's going on in El Salvador, and this is what we want to do here. And so one of the kind of really the painful points for us for the application were, number one, the application was denominated in Satoshis and USD. It was not denominated in the local currency. That was it was a pain point. We were able to overcome that objection. But I think the greatest pain point, and I think any Bitcoin community leader will tell you this, was the volatility of Bitcoin. And so when we got early access to the stable sats function within the Bitcoin Beach wallet, I think in August, we were able to access that feature. So you could receive Bitcoin and move it straight into USD within the app and avoid the volatility. So that really, really opened up doors for us to go back to vendors that were concerned about the volatility. And then early on, we had someone just reached out to me on Twitter, said he would come and see what we were doing at Bitcoin Lake. And I think this was in March. And he and his girlfriend came from Colombia. They're Swiss, but they were in Colombia at the time. And he's actually a coder, and he helped solve some of these problems. We created our own POS system, point of sale system, that you could put in a Bitcoin Beach username, and you could pay them in any currency that you. So if you were there and your app was an Australian dollar, you could pull down a menu and pay an Australian dollar and convert it into the local Kitsao. We've just had phenomenal people like Fabu and his girlfriend Mel come. We've had miners come that, I'm the vision guy, and I'm not a technical guy. I don't understand, I understand the high level stuff about all this, but I can't manage. It's too much to manage. But we've just had wonderful Bitcoiners come and see what we're doing, completely blown away. And they just want to help because of what they see.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, Bitcoiners, we love helping people. I mean, that's part of what's so inspiring about Bitcoin. One of the like coolest, most amazing things about the Bitcoin Lake project is your mining and what you guys are doing with mining. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So, full disclosure up front, the mining has become a very difficult lift for us. I thought it was going to go a lot easier than it has, but it's become a difficult lift. But let me give you the vision and then kind of the concept with the mining that I generated was to go down and use initially solar. And I wrote about this. I started documenting all of this in September of last year on Medium. So if anybody wants to go back and kind of see the genesis or where everything started, you can just type in my username on Medium, 67 Corvette, and you can kind of see what the plan was. And I kind of to kind of document our process and change because we have changed what we've done. So the plan was to use solar. Went down there. I was on a Spaces early this year, and someone suggested that, Patrick, you really should probably consider another energy source because solar is so expensive. And that was Ricardo Cameron in Mexico. And he said, why don't you look into biomining using methane gas? And so I started looking at the wastewater treatment facility upon his suggestion. And the reason for that, there's a large biodigester there that was cracked and it was just leaking methane. So the plan was to try to capture that methane and flare it. And then early on, Bill Whitaker involved in what we were doing down there. And he was very interested in using renewable energy sources, and he's made several trips down there. So as we went down, kind of explored what was going on, we found that, okay, maybe solar's not going to work. The biodigester at the wastewater treatment facility, it's going to work, but then we have to interface with the municipality and the red tape and all that. And it's not like it's not doable, but it's just a hassle we didn't want to put up with. So then we started kind of going farther upstream, so to speak, and found that there's a technology that we were introduced to that will take basically unsorted municipal waste, organic, inorganic. You can literally back a truck up to this facility and burn it in such a way that it's an indirect heat process. There's no combustible or vented organics coming out of it or anything like that. But we could use this to create energy and mine Bitcoin at the same time. It's a fascinating technology, and that's but and then Bill, on one of his trips, decided that he was just going to see if they could use seed oil and an old diesel generator to start hashing, and that became basically our Kaboom Energy project. And the Kaboom Energy project is really a proof of concept to show that really using wasted energy and oil that would have either ended up in the landfill or ended up in the street, you can create Bitcoin. Using a 30 or 40-year-old diesel generator, you can create Bitcoin, and using basically recycled S9 machines, so e-waste. So we're using every form of recycled material to create Bitcoin. And he set it up, and I wasn't there when he did it. And when I saw it, it's a sight to behold. I mean, because when you think about mining, if any of your listeners or viewers mine, or you think about mining, you think about just plugging a miner into the wall socket, or if you host mining, you just think somewhere in the facility they turn the energy on and they start mining, which is true. But then when you see what was not energy become energy to make Bitcoin in front of your eyes within the span of about 10 minutes. I mean, it's really fascinating. It's really fascinating. Anyway, that's kind of what we're doing right now.
No, that's
so the goal. Yeah. So the goal, I'm sorry, Anthony. So the goal is at one point we want to take the landfill waste and use that to create Bitcoin, thereby creating a financial incentive for people to dispose of their waste properly and hopefully save the lake. The
awesome.
One thing about the lake is it's like any developing country. It's not that the citizens of Panajachel don't care about their lake. They love their lake, but they don't have the means or the finances to take care of it properly. And so all the waste comes down into the lake because the landfill is actually about 3,000 feet above the lake. And, all the farming manure, just all that just drains down to the lake. And we're hoping that Bitcoin's going to change that incentive and create economic opportunity at the same time. So that's kind of where we're at right now. And if people want to get involved, please reach out to me. Yeah.
No, that's fantastic. So there's a whole bunch to unpack there. So when you're talking about the seed oil, I want to flesh that out because that's beautiful. So you're talking about spent vegetable oil, right? That's
Yes.
been used in a restaurant or something that normally you just throw that away. Well, now that's fuel. And then you're talking about an old diesel generator that is whatever. You could use it for a home or whatever. And because it's diesel, you can convert the vegetable oil. It'll run off of it and all this kind of stuff. And then you're talking about S9s, which for like a mining business, S9s are not viable. That's trash. So
That's right.
essentially you're just taking all these things which are quote unquote not useful anymore, and you're turning them into Bitcoin. And
That's right.
you're doing it in a way that's like way more affordable than buying a brand new S19, or although S19s have become much more
Yeah.
affordable than they were a year ago. But that's
Yes.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the really more important aspect to this is the absolute decentralization that this provides for decentralization of the hash rate that this provides for poor and disadvantaged communities in the global south. I mean, does it matter if the S9 is not efficient? No. I mean, if you've got some sort of wasted energy source in a village in Central Africa or in the jungles of Guatemala, then you can create Bitcoin, or a few Satoshis or whatever. I mean, that's just unheard of. So I think that's the most beautiful thing about the possibilities here. And by no means is what we're doing efficient at this point. It's just a proof of concept. I think about what we're doing is like a startup. When a startup thinks of a new product idea, a lot of times it doesn't even work. It's just an idea, and it leads to further innovation. So we've got to, if we want to truly make it efficient, we've got to secure the access to the oil and make it efficient and all that. But we're here to demonstrate a proof of concept that can be replicated anywhere in the world. And the really cool thing about the diesel engine also is, I don't know how long it'd been sitting unused, but it was really not being used. I mean, it literally was under a tarp, and Bill and a couple of other guys went to another city about an hour and a half away and thing. And the other amazing thing about the seed oil that is just totally remarkable that none of us before we started doing this is in places like Guatemala. Okay, so like if you go to a McDonald's or a KFC in Guatemala City, they're using top tier, seed oil, right? Because they're buying it straight from the distributor. Well, when they're done using it, however long it takes, a day or a week or whatever, there's still value in that seed oil. They will then sell it to a secondary market, and the local Guatemalan shops or the Guatemalan chains will buy that because they're not McDonald's and they're not KFC. They don't have this quality standard that when you eat at a McDonald's in LA, you want to taste the same as it does in Guatemala City. So these secondary chains will buy the used seed oil. They will use it for however much time. That then becomes a wasted or a used product that is then sold on the tertiary market, fourth market, fifth market, until it can't be used anymore. So it's really disgusting to think that this oil, probably even by the time we got it, had been used 5 or 6 times. But it's absolute sweet justice to know that you can make Bitcoin from seed oil. Absolutely.
Well, and you're talking about a proof of concept, like a startup. You guys have figured it out. You just explained the whole story. We started here, we started there, and then what we got to was seed oil and a diesel engine, and that looks good. So as long as that like energy continues to like move forward, you guys are going to figure it out. And if you're monetizing waste, like it's waste. There is no value in it. It's worth zero. So if you can make it worth more than zero and you get that going, now people start looking at a landfill that is X amount of feet above the lake, polluting the lake, and they just say, well, if instead of throwing it away there, we bring it over here and we could earn some money, then you guys are really onto something. That's fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, what's really cool is the largest landfill in Central America is in Guatemala City. It's a massive landfill, and it would be so cool to see that one day, just this massive landfill could be basically not re-energized, but reclaimed, and energy could be produced. And the really cool thing about it in our model that we're developing is we're not displacing work. So in these landfills, even in the small landfill, there in Panajachel, and I've witnessed this, you get people that when the trucks come and dump the trash, you get people that are called pickers that come and pick up all the recycled materials, plastics and cans and stuff like that. And our process doesn't eliminate that. What we do is actually make it safer and still provide economic opportunity for those people that still want to do that.
I love every part of this, and I can't help but feel like the only thing missing is you just haven't met the right person. Because I mean, there's already people like working on, flaring methane. There's people in the United States that are attaching to landfills. Like Bitcoin is this amazing opportunity for the world, and this is just one of those things. So here you have this large landfill in the city that can be monetized. And it's literally like Bitcoin is just walking around like picking money up out of garbage, and just nobody's doing it yet. So
that's right. So so Vespine Energy in California is doing the landfill, and you've got Upstream Data that's doing and there are several other companies that are using flared methane off of oil pads to mine Bitcoin. And no one has approached the trash aspect yet. So that's basically what we're working on with this company out of the UK. And we've got a big nugget of funding that we need to get to kind of get that going. And it's a matter of time though. It's just, we started with Bitcoin Lake when Bitcoin was, in the 40s. And I think we've all seen it in the space that enthusiasm has just, I don't, our enthusiasm hasn't changed, but I think the vibe has kind of gone down a little bit. And, but it'll turn around. Yeah, it's just a matter of time.
Honestly, this is why, this is one of the benefits of doing, these interviews. So it goes in both directions, right? I've just hit the crap out of my mic. It goes in both directions. So it's not just awesome because, you guys tell your story and then I can deliver that to people who haven't heard the story, which that in and of itself is important and amazing. But I also feel like it goes the other way because to so many Americans, Bitcoin, the value of Bitcoin is entirely enshrined in its fiat value. So when number goes down, it's Bitcoin is worthless. Oh, it used to be 60,000 and now it's 17,000. And God, you're a stupid moron or whatever, right? But when you can present this story, you'd be like, no, it's not worthless. Look what's happening here. Look what it's doing for these people there. So that's where I'm at, and it's and I know it takes people. There's a journey. Because it all starts with how can this make me rich? And then you learn this is not here to make you rich. Like a perfect store of value is just one aspect of what's going on here. There's also freedom and liberty and an honest money for an honest world. And there's all these other things that are important too. So
100%.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, that's amazing that so the funding, you're talking about funding. I don't know if you want to talk about money or whatever, but what are you guys trying to accomplish? Are you raising funds? Are you trying to get funds from, do you need help with this?
We need help. I really don't like to talk to specifics because I feel like the funding, if someone's interested in what we're doing, they'll reach out and kind of, check us out. Just suffice it to say that, it's going to at least several $100,000s to kind of get this project where it needs to go. And you just think about I guess the way to think about how much money we need is if you were starting Google and you understood the opportunity of dematerializing, encyclopedias or whatnot, then you understand the value of, or the need of, what it's going to cost. And it's the same thing. If you can understand the value of basically monetizing trash and what that will do to transform these local economies, and think about it now. I mean, to provide energy security at a time when we really don't have control over especially with the current administration. And I don't like to be political, but if we could somehow figure out how to make this a really viable project, which it will be one day soon, but and provide energy security in places that people need energy security, because everybody produces waste. So it's theoretical that in every location where waste is produced, they could have energy security, because you can if you can mine Bitcoin from it, obviously you're producing energy, so you can parse it and create a grid based on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was kind of long-winded.
No, but I mean, I can summarize because this is beautiful. So essentially, you're taking trash, which you either dig a hole in the ground and you put the trash in there to rot and pollute the environment. There's one option. Or the other option is you monetize that trash, you turn it into energy, which you can mine Bitcoin, while at the same time providing energy in places where normally there would be no energy, especially in disadvantaged and underprivileged communities. But Bitcoin is bad for the environment, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, this is insanity. Like this is just the perfect marriage of like what you need to solve problems for people who really need problems solved.
Yeah, it's what I like to call the virtuous cycle in recycling. So imagine, I just thought of this as you were talking, but just imagine you're walking through the airport or you're walking down the street and you see a bin, and instead of the little, recycle logo, you see, basically a recycle logo, but the terminal end is not a continuous loop. The terminal end is trash to Bitcoin. So you could imagine every time you're throwing something into a bin, you're creating Satoshis. That's essentially what we're doing. Yeah.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's amazing, man. So we've almost hit the 1 hour mark, and I love that analogy that you just gave. I think that's good energy to kind of wrap up on. But before we wrap up, do you have any last things or any last thoughts or any last words, that you want to get out there? Give you.
Well, I appreciate that, Anthony. I guess my last thoughts and words would be, number one, I'm just truly grateful for Bitcoiners that see the work that we're doing. I am obviously very grateful for Stack Chainers and the energy there for what you guys have done for us. And, if I can guarantee you that if you come to Panajachel, you will be blown away. I took a group of about 30 from Adopting Bitcoin to Panajachel after the Adopting Bitcoin conference, and to a man and woman, they were completely blown away by what we've done. So, if you have it on your radar, please come down and visit us. Just reach out to me on Twitter, at Lake Bitcoin, Lago Bitcoin. Lago is lake in Spanish, at Lake Bitcoin on Twitter. And whatever your skill set, please come down and be a part of what we're doing. Yeah.
That's fantastic. And with that, guys, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Bitcoiners, have fun stacking sats.